Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Reinartz. I'm the Community Development Director with Arts South Dakota, and welcome to a conversation about the upcoming statewide input virtual town halls with the South Dakota Arts Council and Arts South Dakota. So before we kind of get into a little more information, I'd like to introduce the other two people with us today. So we have both Rebecca Cruse, the Deputy Director of the South Dakota Arts Council, as well as David Fraher, who's an advisor to the Arts Council for the strategic planning process and is the founder and principal investigator at Curious Explorer LLC. And many of you also know David from his long stint at Arts Midwest, and we're really happy to have him helping facilitate this whole process. So we're here today to talk just a little bit about these upcoming two statewide input meetings. They'll be taking place virtually on June 8th and 9th as a part of this larger strategic planning process. So Arts South Dakota is just so grateful to get to join and help facilitate these two gatherings. We really learn so much about the arts community, their needs, and how jointly the two organizations can work together to better support all the great work happening around the state. Amazing work is being done by artists and organizations in spite of the challenges of the last year and a half and the perennial challenges that we all face in careers and support and work in the arts. And I'm just really looking forward to hearing more about the state of the arts in South Dakota. So to start the conversation, maybe we can provide a little bit of backstory. Rebecca, what is the strategic planning process for the State Arts Council? You know, have you always had a strategic plan? Is this something new? And how does that plan really impact the way you do your work?
Thanks, Andrew. So we have always had a strategic plan at the South Dakota Arts Council. We have traditionally been doing them every 3 years. We will be changing that up a little bit this year. We're going to be writing a little bit longer strategic plan, looking at a different sort of vision and practice for the future that we're working on. I want to really clarify that the strategic planning process isn't perfunctory. We really want to learn from the community, to learn from the state, and to respond to the needs and the wants of our constituency. So it really is important that we hear from people. We weigh your input very heavily, and it will really guide our work going forward. We're here to serve the state, not specific organizations, not specific artists, the state as a whole. So everything that you can tell us to help us do that is very valuable.
What has the process been like so far? I know in addition to you mentioning that it was a much longer, more in-depth process this year, it's just been very unique.
Yeah, we really have, and it's been exciting. I'm so grateful to have David working alongside me on this as the, curious explorer, because that's really what we've been doing this year. So we had a planning process lined up, ready to go when the pandemic hit. And we really had to change everything that we were planning on doing. We had a series of public meetings scheduled all across the state. Obviously, we had to change that plan. And one of the things that we really focused on at that time, because artists were losing work all across the state, so we really wanted to engage artists in this process and work with them, hire them to help us make this happen. So what we did was we contracted with 10 artists all across the state, very diverse geographically, very diverse among their art forms, the kind of work they do, how they work in their communities. And we had them meet with us. We did some professional development, some community building within that group. And then they went out to the field and they started asking people a series of questions. We asked them to find specific information for us, but also to be curious and let those conversations flow, and then come back to us with what they learned. So artists were out in the community interviewing, I think, a couple hundred people once we got done with the whole process. Now we'll open this up with public meetings, and then we'll do some surveying, some online questionnaires, and specific feedback on our programs and grants.
Well, David, I'll maybe turn to you now because you really helped facilitate these artist-led sessions. I think one thing that was really interesting for me was just how many people they reached that were maybe outside of the normal network, because it was kind of a trust transfer of you empowering these artists to then go out and talk to their communities. But, what were some of those consistent themes or ideas that have come up during those conversations?
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. And thanks for facilitating this conversation today. The artist researchers, and that's what I refer to them as artist researchers, were remarkable. The level of care that they took in shaping and trying to reach their communities and folks that we never would have heard of. It was really just astounding. Ultimately, what we learned is that there is an incredible recognition across the state of the power and importance of creativity and creative expression. Once people kind of got past an initial thought about, I don't know, what's going on creative in my community or what's going on with the arts, people would start to open up. There was a great deal of commitment and importance placed on the role of arts education. And I would say arts education, not just in the schools, but a broader understanding and definition of arts education of how do people across all phases of their life have access to expanding their creativity. I think that there was also a desire among artists to have greater access to marketing support, to business skills development. They understand that they have to be entrepreneurial, and many of them don't quite understand how to become entrepreneurial. Those were some of the things that really started to percolate, especially among individuals and individual folks.
I think we also have heard a lot about how we need to communicate differently in the future. I think we have some real opportunities coming out of this long time frame of having to do everything online and electronically, and we can learn a lot from that and continue a lot of that work. It's also very important that we're out in communities personally as well. That certainly is a challenge in a state like South Dakota with how large our state is and how few staff members we have at our state agencies. But it is something that will be, top of our priorities. We want to learn more about what forms of communication would be more helpful across the state, with all groups, all artists. How can we reach everybody better? Also, one of the things that we learned, I think, was how many people feel like they aren't part of the arts community. Even though as artists and as the arts community, we want to be very welcoming and inclusive, we're missing people with that. And we want to find ways to help improve that.
Let's be honest, one of the great challenges that the council faced, that people across South Dakota faced, but in particular our researchers faced, was all of this work was being done during a pandemic. And it was often very difficult for people who were being interviewed to see beyond the pandemic when they were thinking about what was going on in their communities, what was happening with their arts organization or their own careers as artists. Once they did, there was a great deal of latent optimism of like, we're ready to grow again. Nothing will be normal. Normal is gone in many ways. Our goal is to make sure that it's better, that we're coming back stronger, better, more inclusive, more diverse, more engaged with more people. And I think that that's the kind of plan we're hoping to get.
And it really seems like they've been leading towards this idea of wanting to make a bigger tent, a bigger community, just be inclusive of whether it's people, whether it's cultures, whether it's types of art. And so it's just helping people to identify as creatives and to bring this creative problem solving skills into all of the challenges of our communities. What kind of comes next leading up to the final new strategic plan and report?
Yeah, well, Yes, please join the town halls coming up. We really need your help changing the work we do, changing the sector, and growing the arts in South Dakota. Then watch out for the surveys that we'll be sending out. These will just help us get a little more detail than we can get during larger public meetings. We'll also be going back to our council, our Arts Council, to get their input as we develop this plan and write it out. We'll get feedback from them as well. And then late this fall or early winter is when we'll start putting that plan out to the public and developing a work plan to address the goals and strategies that we have in there.
Good. Yeah, I always like seeing that there's a plan. Like you've said, this isn't just perfunctory. This isn't just, we're going to make this strategic plan. It sounds nice, but there's a work plan. There's executable steps that will demonstrate that you're following up on what you've heard and trying to make changes and better support the arts community across South Dakota. I just want to encourage everyone to please register if you haven't already. You'll be able to find the registration links in the video descriptions below, as well as at artsouthdakota.org. They're free virtual events. They're very easy to join from computer, tablet, phone, any device. It'll be a Zoom setup. But we do ask that you register in advance just so we can have kind of a sense of how many people will be there. We'll be doing some targeted breakouts, some guided group discussions, some free open discussion. So I'm just really excited and looking forward to it. I wish we could all be in a couple of vans together on the road, getting out to all of you. But I'm really glad that in some way, shape, and form we'll still be able to have these town hall input meetings. So please mark your calendar. June 8th will be a session focusing largely on organizations. June 9th will be a session focusing largely on individual artists, but they're both open to anyone. Just some of the conversation will be targeted more towards those groups at those two events. And we hope to see you very soon. And thank you all for taking the time to hear more about what the South Dakota Arts Council is up to with their upcoming strategic plan. So thank you so much.
Thanks,
Andrew.
Bye, everybody. See you soon.